I'm David Warren, and I'm president of Bridgeford Trust Company. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about trust jurisdiction and why it matters. Last time we were together, we talked about the relevancy of choosing the correct trust jurisdiction. And today we're going to talk about the fact that Trust Situs matters. Last time we asked the question and we answered it that it absolutely does. And today we're going to talk about a specific area of trust, the directed trust, and how that's had a huge impact and changed the trust world over the last 5 to 10 years in a way that is truly revolutionary, which is a funny word to use in conjunction with trust. Trusts traditionally have never been too exciting, and I guess I could say in many ways this is not your grandfather's trust company anymore, kind of like the Oldsmobile commercial. But the reality is there have been more changes in the last 20 years in the trust industry that have happened in the last 200 years. So in fact, it is an exciting topic. The trust world is very, very dynamic right now, and for the practitioner, the attorney, the financial advisor, the accountant, anybody who's doing wealth planning for individuals, particularly high net worth individuals, this is actually a very exciting time. And one of the most exciting aspects of what's changed in the last 10 or 15 years, as I said, is directed trusts. And we're going to talk about that today and how it can have a huge impact on the estate planning process. The idea of a directed trust is so exciting because it's a direct industry response to problems and concerns and issues that have been raised by attorneys, accountants, high net worth individuals. And what the concern is specifically is that big banks, big corporate trust companies, banks that are trust companies that are attached to large banks, they want to be all things to all people. They want to be the trustee. They want to be the investment manager. They want to be the person that sells them insurance. They want to be the person that provides their lending and does all of their wealth planning. And while that has worked generally over the last 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe even 100 years, what's happening is individuals, high net worth individuals, and more importantly their advisors are starting to realize that this idea of being a jack of all trades just doesn't work. The concept of being an expert in everything under the same roof doesn't work. It's too expensive, it's way too rigid, there's way too much restriction over the trust administration, and it's just not possible for one institution to be an expert in every single topic. So this bundled services offering, which carries with it usually a very high fee, just doesn't work anymore. High net worth individuals particularly are driving this conversation and have driven this conversation over the last 12 to 15 years where they're saying, listen, I need a trustee, but I don't want that trustee to manage my money. Or I need a trustee, but I don't want that trustee to cross-sell me anything else I don't need. And just because somebody's an expert in trust services doesn't mean they know what they're doing when it comes to asset management. So the idea of the directed trust is born out of this frustration. It unbundles what has traditionally been bundled. And it has been an extremely positive development. And again, what's exciting about it is that it's an industry response to what has been considered to be a major problem in the trust space over the last many years. And this is why I've said earlier, this is not your grandfather's trust company anymore. This is exciting, this is dynamic, and it has very, very real positive implications for clients and their advisors. So what is a directed trust? Very simply, it unbundles the services that I talked about a moment ago that have traditionally been bundled together. It recognizes, the directed trust recognizes that just because a bank has an expertise in being a trustee doesn't necessarily mean they're the best asset manager in the world. It recognizes the idea that high net worth individuals or anybody that's dealing with trusts have lost control. They have lost control over who can manage their money. They've lost control over the details of trust administration, and they've lost control over the advisors that they want to work with. And the reason why it works so well is because it opens up a whole new world of bifurcation of liability. That's the word that we always hear in context of a directed trust, and it's very, very important to understand this. It's important particularly for the attorneys and the accountants and financial advisors to understand what this means. The reason why the directed trust works so well is that it takes liability and it apportions it. So the liability that is associated with asset management is not connected to the liability that a trust company would have relative to trust administration. It breaks it apart. Why does that matter? It has huge implications, because you take a trust company like Bridgeford Trust Company. We as a trust company working in a directed trust capacity are very happy to work with an investment advisor because of this bifurcation of liability. We're only liable for what we do, and the investment manager is liable for what they do. Hence the idea of bifurcating the liability. This very, very simple legal concept has exploded the concept of a directed trust across the country. So in practical terms, the directed trust concept allows the client to work with the investment manager that they want, and allows them to work with the trustee that they want to work with. It gives them back control over so many aspects of the trust relationship that have previously been taken away by this large trust company bundled approach. Now, directed trusts are created by statute. Not every state has the directed trust statute, and in fact, right now, only 6 states in the country have directed trusts, including South Dakota, Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming, and a couple of others. Without the statute, there is no directed trust capability in the state, and that is very, very important, because Pennsylvania does not have a directed trust statute. It does not have the ability to bifurcate liability, which is why in most cases here in Pennsylvania, a bank is not going to be interested in having you or having an advisor other than themselves manage the money, because they're going to say liability is too great, we can't control that person. So in Pennsylvania, there is no directed trust statute. But just because Pennsylvania doesn't have a directed trust statute doesn't mean that residents of Pennsylvania, or residents of any state in the country for that matter, can't avail themselves of the benefits of using a directed trust to take back control over their trust planning. It's very easy to work with the states that I've mentioned that have directed trust statutes. In fact, each state that I've mentioned, all 6 states have very, very, very easy rules to follow to amend the trust, to reform the trust in a way to create the directed trust component to it, allowing for the bifurcation of liability and allowing for the clients and the beneficiaries and the settlers to use the investment managers of their choosing. South Dakota is actually considered to be the easiest state in the country right now to move, first move the trust to South Dakota, and then reform the trust in a way that allows for the directed trust capability. Now, there are other advantages to the directed trust. We've talked about the idea that we, as a trust company, Bridgeford Trust Company, because of the directed trust statute, are happy to work with investment advisors or other advisors that the client or the settler of the trust or the beneficiary or the trust protector, whomever they want to work with, as long as they satisfy our due diligence, we're happy to work with them. And that's a great benefit, and it gives back a lot of control, as we keep saying. But another unintended, I think, benefit is the idea of, if liability is bifurcated, companies like Bridgeford are more likely to work with non-traditional assets, such as closely held stock, real estate, artwork, other types of non-traditional assets that typical large banks with trust departments will not work with anymore. And in fact, that's somewhat ironic, I think, because trust companies and the concept of a trust was established 300 or 400 years ago in Massachusetts to pass property from one generation to the other in a tax-efficient way. Property as defined as real estate, closely held stock, interest in business, not just investable assets. Bridgeford Trust Company and others working under the directed trust company model or directed trust model are very happy to work in that space, and very happy to serve as a trustee for those types of assets, which in fact, in many cases, make up the bulk of an individual's estate. Directed trusts, they are a compelling planning tool. They have changed the landscape in the trust world dramatically, and they will continue to change the landscape dramatically. It's an example of why it matters, why Trust Situs matters. As we talked about, Pennsylvania does not have this capability. 6 states in the country do, and to understand which states have that capability makes the planner, the financial advisor, the attorney, the accountant, so much more important to the high net worth family, because they understand what's available out there. And they understand the idea that the traditional approach to trust planning doesn't have to apply anymore. That the world is changing, the trust world is changing fast, and it's changing in a way that is absolutely pulling assets and relationships away from the large bank-based trust companies across the country, and basically creating a situation where control is being placed back into the hands of the client. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation about directed trust. I'm excited about the concept. I'm passionate about the changes that's occurring in the trust industry because of it. And I would love the opportunity to answer questions. If you have them, please feel free to contact me. Please look at our website. There's more information about directed trust on the website. And please feel free to sign up for our blog, which is constantly pushing out information, updated information about directed trust, asset protection trust, and changes that are happening in the trust industry generally. Thank you again for watching. The bank, shit. This is such a, and doesn't, man, damn. Distinguish them and all, damn it. Oh, read, directed trust allows for, and I'm going to use a big fancy word here, let me start over, that's condescending. But, you know, I have to start the whole thing over. I'm sorry. Liability landscape. I have to start over. I'm sorry. Born from statutory. Let's go back. Okay. Similar way, but can we go back? Company is much. Can we start over? Yep. What did I say? It's in a way that we were supposed to. No. Okay. How do I fix that? Shit, I'm losing my concentration. Is that all right? You think that was?
Yeah.
All right. I hope you have enjoyed this talk. Let me start over. Sorry. This concept of the directed trust is so exciting because it directly addresses problems and concerns that have been raised in the trust space by attorneys, accountants, high net worth individuals. And they're all complaining about the traditional approach to trust services. Big bank acts as your investment manager, your trust company. Often they're your lender. They're providing wealth planning. They're providing tax planning. They're providing everything. The literature says they act like a jack of all trades, and the suggestion is they're a master of none. And the reality is no one organization, no matter how hard they try, can be experts in everything. That's not how we're even taught anymore. We're taught in an interdisciplinary way, and the high net worth community is frankly demanding more. And this idea of bundling the services together is no longer working. The system is considered to be broken at this point. In comes the concept of a directed trust.